June 6, 1944. 0630 hours. Omaha Beach, Normandy. American forces hit the sand, and within minutes the beach became a slaughterhouse. Men fell by the hundreds. Landing craft burned. Wounded, drowned in the rising tide. Engineers trying to clear obstacles were cut down before they could place their charges. Tanks that survived the landing sat helpless, unable to advance through minefields. By 0830 that morning, with the first two waves chewed to pieces, the situation at Omaha looked catastrophic. General Omar Bradley stood aboard the USS Augusta, wondering if the invasion might be failing. Before we dive deeper into this story of courage, tragedy, and the cost of pride, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from, whether you're in New York, Normandy, or anywhere in between. Your support helps preserve these stories for future generations. Just miles away on Gold Beach, British forces were already 6 kilometers inland. On Juno Beach, Canadian troops had penetrated 12 kilometers, the deepest advance of the entire day. On Sword Beach, British soldiers had cleared the beach exits within an hour. The difference was not courage. American soldiers at Omaha showed extraordinary bravery. The difference was technology, specialized armored vehicles that British engineers had spent 2 years developing. Vehicles designed specifically to clear mines, destroy bunkers, and overcome beach obstacles. Vehicles the British had offered to American commanders, vehicles that General Omar Bradley had seen demonstrated, had initially requested and then refused, and in that moment, as Bradley watched the carnage unfold through binoculars, he realized with cold clarity that American pride had just cost 2,400 men their lives. The warning signs were written in blood 2 years earlier. August 19, 1942, the port of Dieppe on the French coast. British and Canadian forces launched Operation Jubilee. It was a catastrophe. 3,600 casualties. Most tanks destroyed or captured on the beaches. The Churchill tanks that made it ashore could not cross the seawalls. They became steel coffins, picked off methodically by German gunners, while stuck and immobile. Engineers tried to blow gaps through obstacles, but were massacred while working under fire. Standard armor and conventional tactics had failed utterly against fortified beach defenses. But Lord Mountbatten would later make a remarkable claim. The Battle of D-Day was won on the beaches of Dieppe. The disaster taught the British exactly what not to do. More importantly, what new capabilities they desperately needed. The man who would provide those capabilities was at that moment serving as a lance corporal in the Home Guard. Major General Percy Hobart had been one of Britain's most innovative tank officers. He had created the legendary 7th Armored Division. In 1940, he was forced into retirement. Hobart was 55 years old, drilling with a pike in the Cotswolds, when Winston Churchill intervened. The Prime Minister had read an article titled, "We have wasted brains," and was furious that Britain had sidelined one of its most creative military minds during a desperate war. Churchill personally overruled the Chief of Imperial General Staff and recalled Hobart to active duty. In March 1943, the 79th Armored Division was about to be disbanded. General Brooke offered it to Hobart as an experimental unit to develop specialized invasion armor. Hobart accepted on one condition. It must be a combat unit with an operational role, not merely a training command. Hobart established headquarters in Suffolk. He created something unique in military history, a think tank that would actually go to war. His directive was revolutionary. Suggestions from all ranks for improvements in equipment are to be encouraged. Not just from officers, from all ranks. Private soldiers could propose ideas and see them tested. Hobart built a training center that replicated every type of German beach defense: concrete bunkers, steel obstacles, minefields, barbed wire, anti-tank ditches. His engineers studied the failures at Dieppe and designed vehicles to overcome each specific problem. The first invention was the Sherman Crab. Take a standard Sherman tank and fit it with a rotating drum mounted on arms ahead of the hull. From that drum, hang 43 chains with heavy metal weights. Spin the drum at 142 revolutions per minute. The chains beat the earth ahead of the tank like mechanical flails, detonating mines and cutting barbed wire in a path 20 feet wide. Operating speed while flailing was painfully slow, 1.25 miles per hour, but that was infinitely faster than engineers could clear mines while under machine gun fire. 3 crabs operated in formation, creating a broad, safe path. German Private Martin Ihnen of the 726th Infantry Regiment watched one attack on Gold Beach. Years later, he recalled, "I had never seen a machine like this. The chains flew up into the air after mine explosions, but the crab only cleared the path. The bunker still had to be destroyed." For that, Hobart created the Churchill AVRE, the Armored Vehicle Royal Engineers, remove the main gun and replace it with the petard spigot mortar. The projectile was nicknamed the Flying Dustbin. It weighed 40 pounds with a 28-pound high explosive warhead. At 80 to 90 yards range, it could obliterate concrete bunkers that had survived hours of naval bombardment. Loading the petard was terrifying. The loader climbed partially out of the tank, completely exposed, to ram the dustbin into the breach. All of this while under enemy fire. On Juno Beach, a German anti-tank gun in a concrete strongpoint knocked out for Canadian tanks. An AVRE rolled forward and fired its petard. The flying dustbin hit the bunker, and approximately 24 defenders were killed instantly. 48 Germans surrendered immediately. The strongpoint that had stopped for conventional tanks was eliminated by one specialized vehicle. But some bunkers were so heavily fortified that even the petard could not crack them. For those, Hobart created something that would break German morale completely: the Churchill Crocodile, a Churchill tank towing a 6.5-ton armored trailer containing 400 gallons of thickened fuel. A flame projector replaced the hull-mounted machine gun. It could shoot flame 110 to 150 yards. Critically, the Crocodile retained its full 75mm gun. It was both a conventional gun tank and a weapon of psychological warfare. The terror the Crocodile inspired was extraordinary. Multiple German accounts note that the mere sight of the vehicle induced troops to surrender. Crocodile crews developed a tactic: fire unignited fuel as a warning before the flames came. This mercy was rarely reciprocated. Captured Crocodile crews were often summarily executed by enraged Germans who considered flame weapons beyond acceptable warfare. Hobart's arsenal included dozens of other specialized vehicles: bob and carpet layers that unrolled reinforced mats across soft sand, Fazine's bundles of wooden poles that could be dropped into anti-tank ditches, Churchill bridge layers that deployed 30-foot bridges in 90 seconds, and the DD tank's duplex drive amphibious Sherman's, a rubberized canvas screen, rose above the turret, providing about 3 feet of freeboard. 2 propellers pushed it through the water at 4 knots. The DD tank had one critical limitation: they were designed for relatively calm waters. In rougher seas, the canvas screens could collapse and the tanks would sink like stones. By early 1944, Hobart had created an entire assault system, not just individual vehicles, but a combined arms approach where each specialized tank solved one problem while supporting the others. On January 27, 1944, Supreme Commander General Dwight Eisenhower and First Army Commander Lieutenant General Omar Bradley attended their first demonstration of Hobart's Funnies. A second demonstration followed on February 11th. Eisenhower immediately grasped their value. He requested 100 DD tanks. He left decisions on other vehicles to Bradley. Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery and General Hobart offered the Americans a third of the Funnies, essentially a half share of everything being produced: DD tanks, Sherman Crabs, Churchill AVREs, Crocodile flamethrowers, bridging equipment, everything. On February 16, 1944, Bradley's staff documented requests: 100 DD tanks, 25 Sherman flail tanks, 100 Churchill Crocodiles. But with only 4 months until D-Day and deep skepticism within Bradley's staff, the Americans ultimately took only DD tanks and a few Dozer Shermans. A Bradley staff officer later explained bluntly, the general didn't like the Funnies. He saw it as an infantryman's battle. Besides, the tanks were British. He thought we should do it on our own. Bradley's post-war justifications emphasized logistics. Accepting the Churchills would require retraining operators and a complicated supply chain for spare parts. But this does not explain why Sherman-based Funnies, like the Crabs, which used the same hulls as standard American tanks, were not prioritized. Pride, doctrine, national independence. American commanders believed they could do it their own way. The alternative plan for Omaha Beach relied on overwhelming firepower. 450 heavy bombers would drop 13,000 bombs. Then battleships and cruisers would deliver massive naval bombardment. combat engineers would manually clear gaps through obstacles. It would work because American firepower would pulverize any resistance before the infantry even landed. That was the theory. The reality began to unravel before dawn. 550 hours, 450 American heavy bombers approached Omaha Beach. Low clouds forced delayed bomb releases. Pilots feared hitting their own ships. They dropped their bombs 3 to 5 kilometers inland. Result: every single German defensive position survived completely intact, 06 to 7 hours. Naval bombardment ended after roughly 40 minutes. Poor visibility meant much of it went astray. On British beaches, that limited bombardment was quickly followed by Funnies, smashing minefields and strongpoints. At Omaha, with most DD tanks sunk and no flails or AVREs, infantry had to do almost everything the hard way. 0535 hours. The 741st Tank Battalion launched 29 DD tanks about 5,000 yards offshore into seas, rougher than anything they had practiced in. Within minutes, 27 DD tanks sank. The canvas screens collapsed, water poured in. Crew members drowned, some trapped inside, others pulled under by equipment weight. Only 2 DD tanks reached shore under their own power, but the plan was already in ruins. No bombardment effect, virtually no tank support. Every German defender alert and ready. 630 hours. The first wave hit Omaha Beach. Company A, 116th Infantry Regiment, landed at Dog Green Sector. The company included 35 men from Bedford, Virginia, a National Guard unit from the same small town. Within 7 minutes, Company A essentially ceased to exist. Captain Taylor Fellers had written to his parents, "It is hard to beat a Bedford boy for a soldier." Fellers was killed within minutes leading the assault. Twin brothers Ray and Roy Stevens had wanted to shake hands before boarding separate landing craft. Roy said, "We'll shake hands on the beach." Ray was killed. Brothers Bedford and Raymond Hobart both killed. Brothers Jack and Clyde Powers, Jack killed, Clyde wounded. By the time Company A regrouped, 96% were casualties. Of 230 men, only 18 were UNWOUNDED. The Bedford Boys, 19 killed on D-Day. The highest per capita loss of any American town in a single day. 3 minutes after the infantry, 16 Gap assault teams landed, 175 Navy Combat Demolition Unit sailors, plus hundreds of Army engineers. Their mission was to blow gaps through beach obstacles while under fire. Everything went wrong. Most teams mislanded due to current explosives, sank, or were swept away. Infantry took shelter behind the very obstacles engineers needed to blow. Enemy fire detonated explosives prematurely. The engineers climbed 10 to 12 feet up wooden pilings while under machine gun fire to place charges on mines. Some men stood on each other's shoulders. They continued working as their comrades were blown apart. First wave result: only 6 of 16 planned gaps cleared. Engineer casualties, over 40%. Navy Combat Demolition Unit casualties, 52%, 31 killed, 60 wounded out of 175 men. The highest casualty rate of any D-Day unit. Without mine-clearing flails, the engineers had to do it manually. Without armored vehicles to destroy bunkers, infantry had to storm them directly. Technician 5th grade John Pinder Jr. was a professional baseball player before the war. He was wounded 3 times before reaching shore. The left side of his face was cut off and hanging by flesh. He refused medical treatment. 3 times he went back into the surf to recover radio equipment. He assembled everything under fire and got the radios operational. Then a machine gun burst hit him in the chest. Medal of Honor, posthumously. First Lieutenant Jimmy Monteith Jr. led men through to minefields to reach the bluffs. Then he walked up to buttoned-up Sherman tanks under fire and banged on their sides to get the crew's attention. He personally guided them through minefields to positions where they destroyed German emplacements. He was mortally wounded, leading an assault. Medal of Honor, posthumously. By 0800 hours, the situation at Omaha was catastrophic. No gaps in the seawall, vehicles piling up, wounded drowning as the tide rose. At 0830 hours, landing operations were temporarily suspended on some sectors. General Omar Bradley, watching from USS Augusta, sat with a terrible question. Was Omaha a failure? For a few dark moments, he even considered diverting later waves to other beaches. The Germans defending Omaha were not the expected garrison troops. Allied intelligence anticipated the 716th Static Infantry Division, older soldiers, physically unfit personnel. Actually present was the veteran 352nd Infantry Division. Roughly 12,000 personnel, including combat-experienced troops from the Russian front. At strongpoint WN-62, 20-year-old Corporal Heinrich Severloh manned an MG-42 machine gun with pre-registered fields covering the entire beach. The position featured two 75mm cannons, 188mm anti-tank gun, multiple machine guns. 25 soldiers created overlapping fields of fire with no dead zones on the beach. German accounts, specifically, noted that DD tanks largely sank. Americans fought essentially tankless in the initial waves. Only 58 tanks total reached Omaha initially. By midnight, June 6th, 34,000 troops were ashore. But the beachhead was only 1 to 1.5 miles deep, far short of the 8-mile objective. Final toll, approximately 2,400 American casualties at Omaha Beach, just miles away. A very different battle was unfolding. On Gold Beach, British forces landed with full support from Hobart's Funnies. Sherman Crabs flailed paths through minefields. Churchill AVREs destroyed bunkers. DD tanks provided immediate fire support. By 0930 hours, 7 of 8 beach exits were cleared. Troops were advancing inland by mid-morning. Casualties for the entire day: 400 to 413 men out of 25,000 troops, a casualty rate of 1.6%. On Juno Beach, Canadian forces faced some of the heaviest German defenses, but Hobart's Funnies went in first. Working with Sherman Crabs and DD tanks, they cleared beach defenses. Canadian forces advanced up to 12 kilometers inland by midnight, the deepest penetration of any Allied force on DDA. Casualties for the entire day: 961 to 1,240 men out of 21,400 troops, a casualty rate of 4.5 to 5.8%. On Sword Beach, British forces landed with extensive Funny support. Beach exits were secured within 1 hour. Casualties for the entire day: 630 to 1,000 men out of 29,000 troops, a casualty rate of 2.2 to 3.4%. Omaha Beach suffered 5 to 6 times more casualties than Gold Beach and roughly twice as many as Juno. The difference was Hobart's Funnies. After the war, Supreme Commander Dwight Eisenhower made a devastating assessment. The comparatively light casualties which we sustained on all the beaches except Omaha were in large measure due to the success of the novel mechanical contrivances which were employed. Read that carefully. All the beaches except Omaha. Eisenhower directly connected the absence of Funnies to Omaha's high casualties. Field Marshal Montgomery stated that the 79th Armored Division is composed of units and equipment which have no parallel in any other army in the world. The historical consensus is clear. The decision to refuse most of Hobart's Funnies cost American lives. Some historians offer arguments. Omaha's terrain was uniquely difficult. The 352nd Division's unexpected presence was critical. The DD tank failures show even accepted Funnies could fail. Yet these arguments don't explain why Sherman-based Funnies, like Crabs, were not used more extensively. They don't explain why Bradley initially requested 25 crabs and 100 crocodiles, then declined them. The staff officer's comment captures the truth. The general didn't like the Funnies. He saw it as an infantrymen's battle. Besides, the tanks were British. He thought, we should do it on our own. Pride, doctrine, national independence. These factors cost 2,400 casualties. The American military eventually learned, decades later, during Vietnam, the United States Army deployed armored bulldozers. In the modern era, the M1150 assault breacher vehicle, developed between 2003 and 2007, is a 72-tune specialized mine-clearing vehicle based on the M1 Abrams chassis. The assault breacher vehicle is Hobart's vision 6 decades later. The Americans learned they just learned 60 years too late for the men of Omaha Beach. On June 6, 1944, at 0830 that morning, General Omar Bradley sat on USS Augusta, considering whether Omaha was a failure. The western anchor of the invasion hung by a thread. What saved Omaha was not the plan. The plan had completely failed. It was individual heroism. Men like Monteith Pinder and thousands of unnamed soldiers who moved forward out of desperate necessity. Bradley later wrote that he was shaken to find that we'd gone against Omaha with so thin a margin of safety. The margin was not thin. It was not. From Dieppe disaster to D-Day was 22 months. The British developed an entirely new category of armored vehicles. American commanders saw the demonstrations. Bradley initially requested them. The technology was offered freely, yet pride and doctrine led to refusal. The 2,400 casualties at Omaha compared to 400 at Gold Beach represent the cost. The Bedford boys died in 7 minutes.